Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Wednesday Writing Community Chat Show. We're very excited to be here. And although it's only been about 4 days, it feels like it's been forever again. And we're very happy to be back and very happy for you guys to be there. Already comments flying in. Great stuff. Thank you very much. And please share this tweet, whatever you're watching on, like Facebook or Twitter. Hello, Chris, who's back in the loft. How are you doing?
I am indeed back in the loft. Hopefully only temporarily. It's cold.
We have enjoyed very much the tours we get of your house, so that's fantastic to see you back in the loft. But we'd like to see where that ends up. Dave Middleton, hello to you, and Vince is in the house as well. Hello, nice to see you with us. And as always, we'll start the show off, then we'll introduce our guest, and we'll get into that. And we can't wait tonight. So let's do this. Before you do this, Chris, it seems to be a bit of a theme that I create a brand new video each week for you to disapprove of or approve of. Mainly disapprove. So I've got a new one for the beer token appreciation. Are you ready for this?
Ready as I'll ever be.
All right, so let's take it away. What do you think of that?
That's actually very fitting for the guest that we've got on the show. I think
it wasn't planned. Okay. Yeah, so tonight's beer token book promotion. If you don't know what this is, some of the community that we work with in the writing community, they can sponsor the show and put their book up in the top corner, which Chris really loves to look at very shortly, and we'll explain what the book is about. So tonight's promotion is from our recent guest, JC Paulson, who was fantastic on the show only last week, and her book, Adam's Witness, which is the first in her series and collection of books, and a thrilling mystery, crime, and romance novel, which has had 151 ratings, and it's still 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon. And someone has said, this sizzling romance crime thriller is set around Adam, a handsome police detective, and Grace, a reporter and witness to a murder. Their attraction is clear and smolders off the pages. And as a romance, this works for me. And as a whodunit too, I was left guessing as to the motive and culprit. So that sounds like an absolutely fantastic book. He's got the reviews there to back it up. So please go and check that out for us. Support the authors that support the show. Hold your horses, Chris. Okay, Adam's Witness, and I've put the other book of hers up there. So that's Broken Through, which is the second book in the series. So enjoy that one. Yes, thank you for sponsoring the show, and we'll get the guest on.
And he's disappeared because he's got fat thumbs and a new mouse. So I'm hoping he'll be back in a second, because otherwise it's just my big face. So
it's okay. It's okay. I'm back. Panic over. Oh, Kate Harrison's on the show, everybody.
Hi.
I apologize. Welcome to the show. Kate, how are you doing?
Really good. I'm looking forward to it. I can't think of a better way to spend a Wednesday evening on lockdown.
Exactly. I mean, on Wednesdays just kind of really, really dull these days, as is most of the other days of the week too. I'm sorry for jumping off screen there. I clearly pressed that button I talked about with Chris just before the show again. So apologies. So yes, tonight's guest before we steam ahead, Kate Harrison, fiction and non-fiction writer. There's a few different things we can talk about very shortly with the books. Over 20 novels that you've written, which is fantastic, and a TV news correspondent and a screenwriter or scriptwriter back in the day. So that's fantastic stuff and a lot of insight for us to get through there. So first and foremost, hello to you, and we hope you're well. And as we spoke about very briefly before the show started, we love your background there with all your, as we found out, Brighton things. Is that because you're hailing from Brighton?
Yes. Yeah, not originally. I've actually moved all over the country and even spent some time in Spain and the Netherlands. But I've been here in Brighton for 9-10 years now. Love it. Favourite place on the planet.
It's amazing.
Sorry?
I said you couldn't stay away from Brighton. It just pulled you back.
I just love it. I love it. It's fantastic. I've even got it on my mug here.
It's fantastic.
Love a good mug.
Oh yeah, big conversation this weekend was the tea. So, Kate, can we have a little chat very briefly before we get into more detail about where writing came from in the first place in your life? And obviously there's a bit of background there in another profession that kind of links into this. So is that where it stemmed from? Was it something from an earlier age that kind of inspired you to write?
I'm one of those kids who was always loving stories right from the very beginning, and books. And I became a journalist really because I couldn't imagine that I would become a writer of books. It just seemed way, way beyond what was in my sphere, if you like. But I was good at English at school. And before that, I think, my family were really into telling stories. I had a granddad who had fantastic war stories, and my mum loved to read. My dad's more on the maths side, but I was always making stuff up and kind of scribble. As soon as I could write, I was scribbling stuff down. And then, I couldn't really think of a job that would involve writing apart from journalism. And it was actually a really good thing for me to do because I was incredibly shy as a teenager. And anyone who's done any journalism will know that doesn't really work. You have to be out there sort of knocking on doors or asking awkward questions. So it kind of made me, even if I didn't want to do it, my boss would make me do it. And of course, it gives you loads of stories for later on and loads of characters when I turn to fiction.
It's amazing. So, sorry. So how did you transition then from someone who was a young person that's really into sort of writing to get into journalism? Because it's not something that I imagine, definitely not in my life, that it's something that's become apparent as a career to step into.
I guess so, because I was good at English at school, back in the day, we used to fill in this computerized career form. You tick what you're good at and tick what you weren't good at. And it came up, actually, I found the printout the other day. It was like a really ancient kind of printout paper. And it came up with, author was up there, actually. And I didn't really remember. Author, nurse, I think, doctor, and church worker, which is a bit of a big presumption that I'd be into religion of any kind. And I actually originally wanted to be an actor. And I think that's quite common among writers. Despite the fact that I was not an extrovert at all, I really liked playing roles. The downside was I could not dance and still can't to save my life. I have 2 left feet. So, the easiest way to get an equity card in those days, which is kind of what you need to be able to do, to act, was to go and dance on cruise ships. would not have been an option for me. So then I started looking for the other options, and journalism actually has always been, I don't know if it is now, but when I did it, and this is in the 90s when I started off, it was quite egalitarian. So you didn't necessarily have to have wealthy parents, and they would pay you from quite early on. So I didn't go to uni. I had a place, but I just thought, I want to earn some money and I want to get out there. And I did a 1-year journalism course down at Highbury College in Portsmouth and just learned all the craft side of things, so shorthand and law and that kind of thing. And then went and worked for a news agency for a couple of years, which was like real foot in the door, kind of, not very nice stuff often, quite grimy, because you always had to be first with the story. It was so long ago that we only had 1 mobile phone in the whole office, and if you didn't get that, you'd have to be for your job, whatever it was you were going off to do, you have to run round looking for a phone box in order to phone your copy in. I really am that ancient.
Wow, that's incredible.
It's okay. Tell us about that transition, because obviously you're a journalist, you work in, I should imagine the hours are quite relentless. When did you suddenly think, right, I'm going to sit down and I'm actually going to write a book? How did that sort of process come about?
I always wrote little short stories on the side and things like that, but the idea of a novel, which is pretty much the only way that you can transition into being a full-time writer, I guess, was just seemed, again, a bit too long, a bit too distant. And then I think it was really writers like Helen Fielding, so the Bridget Jones Diary stuff that came out, and Lisa Jewell, Nick Hornby, people like that. They started getting published, and they were stories that felt like they spoke to me. They were kind of stories of people a bit like me, living kind of, young person living in the city, kind of dating, but not just dating, also just life stuff, and a bit of fun fun with it, a bit of comedy. And that was when I first started thinking, you know, maybe this isn't totally impossible. So I fiddled around with some kind of real life stuff, you know, things about my own life. I'm really glad never got published. And then early in the millennium, I don't know if anyone's old enough to remember, but there was all this Friends Reunited stuff. That was pretty much the first social networking site, actually. Even around the same time as MySpace, there was no Facebook. Seems incredible now. And there was also this whole tendency of people to, in their sort of late 20s and 30s, to kind of dress up in school uniform and go to school disco and dance to kind of, you know, 80s hits. And so I had this idea for somebody organising a school reunion who thinks that those were the best years of her life. And then what she doesn't realise when she's organising this reunion is that actually she was the school bully and everyone hated her. So it was that whole conflict between how you might think you are and how other people see you. And I was just so intrigued by this. And I actually went to, you know, I said at the beginning that I've only lived in Brighton for 9 years and had moved a lot. I went to about 13 different schools as a kid. And then later I worked as BBC education correspondent. So I've always been quite interested in schools and education. And this was a way to kind of make it funny and also quite dark.
Yeah, definitely. Certainly life experience pays into that, where you can write the darker side of life and the more gritty stuff, like you said, you experienced back then. But you're someone who's written a lot of different genres and a lot of sort of fiction and non-fiction work. So why is there an attraction to you to be so wide in terms of what your writing sort of creations are?
I've got a bit of well, there's two ways of saying this. A butterfly mind is a nice way of saying it, and a chronically short attention span is the other way of saying it. Okay, so I really like doing lots of different things and trying lots of different things. I never settled really job-wise. I was always changing job within journalism and the BBC then. And I think it's just what's interesting me at the time. And that's the one knack I think I have got, is that I can look at what's interesting me and then sort of broaden it out a bit. So whether it was school reunions at the time, that seemed to me a really rich theme, through to writing about intermittent fasting, which is what I did 8 years ago. But again, that it always comes from me. Like at that time, I'd been writing full time for, I don't know, about 10 years. And I had got a bit of a writer's arse problem going on, you know. Plus, I was a bit worried about health. Both my parents had got diabetes. And I was a bit like, oh, why can't I lose weight? And I'd been doing the yo-yo dieting my whole life. And then I started trying the intermittent fasting, which is a completely new thing then. And it was working. And I thought, you know what, maybe I could write something from the point of view of somebody who has been a yo-yo dieter, but with my journalistic background as well. Yeah, exactly. I mean, you know, how many of us hadn't? Looks like, you know, you're the lucky one then.
I have. That was a have.
Oh, well, there you go. You see, you know, it's really hard in the world that we live in to kind of control what you eat. So I thought, well, I can do that. And I initially self-published it with help of my agent. She read it and stuff, and we got it up on Amazon. And then my fiction publisher said, you know what, actually, this is, as it's gone to #1 in the diet charts, and it was in the Amazon top 10 for ages, you know, we'd like to publish it. And that went on. That was the whole non-fiction side of my career. And I have to say, tonight I'm on the tea because I'm still fasting. That is like now a total part of my life.
So explain that to me then, in terms of your fasting. I'm aware of the 5-2 diet and kind of roughly how it works, but you're saying that you're on your tea now. What does that mean for today's food and diet nutrition? How has that worked? So
the fasting days are not a complete fast, thankfully. Right. Although I have tried it in the interest of kind of science and experimentation a couple of times, but it does make me quite ratty. So on my fasting days, I eat around about 500 calories. So today I had a bit of yogurt with some fruit, full fat Greek yogurt, mind you, with a few berries and a little bit of granola. And then I've had some soup, and then I had an egg on toast. So it's not exactly nothing. It's not nothing, but what it does is it allows me to eat exactly what I like the rest of the time. And I used to do it 1 day a week, but in lockdown, I've found that the lure of the biscuit tin and sweetening and all that kind of thing is a bit too much. And so that's the thing with adjustability, is that I tend to do it now 2 days a week, which is what I did initially to lose the weight, but that compensates for the gin and the biscuits on the other days. You know, That's just how it works. And it has worked. I have kept off 2 stone for the last 8 years. So I was 2 stone heavier than I am now. And, you know, and my diabetes kind of measurements are all fine and everything. So that's, I wouldn't be, I'd have a much bigger writer's arse problem now. Put it that way. If it weren't for that.
So, Kate, let's talk a little tiny bit about your writer's arse then, in terms of when you first sat down. Yeah, when you first sat down to write a book, what was the process like for you, and how has that changed over the years, and that whole approach to your process?
I've always been a bit of a planner. I've always liked to have a little bit of a framework to work to if I go blank. So I've always kind of, but that might well change quite a lot. I have always written quite quickly, again, because of that short attention span thing. I find that if I don't seize on the idea when it's really fresh in my mind, then I tend to get bored with it quite quickly. But I also tend to look, I am a bit of a writing courses and writing book junkie. I love those. I love them. And it's not just that I love all the theories, they also sort of help kid me into the idea that I'm going to be able to finish the book this time. Because even though I've written all these books, I still have that kind of worry, oh, maybe I'm not going to do it. So if I have another new theory, even if I discard it after chapter 1 about, you know, the hero's journey or whatever it might be, then that allows me to just, it's like a prop, I suppose, a little bit of a crutch to say, yeah, you can do this. And then I get into the characters and the stories, and then mostly they see me through to the end. And also editing, that's the other thing actually that's changed a lot. I've realized that I quite like embracing editing now in a way that to start with I kind of felt in journalism, especially television journalism, you just have to get it in there, you know, you just have to get it on deadline and you know, be accurate, but the bits around the edge, you know, there's no chance of going back. And then after that, I went to documentaries, and it's the opposite. You know, you can kind of twiddle around for hours, days, months, weeks. But with writing, it's different. You know, you've still got those opportunities, especially traditional publishing, I guess, where the period is so long. You know, I signed a deal for books, my latest pseudonym, which is Eva Carter, and that book's coming out next May. And I signed the deal. It will almost be 2 years after I signed the deal. So that book had been written already for a year or so before that. And that book actually, exceptionally for me, had been one that the idea had been in my head for a long time. So, you know, this is a real process of changing and editing and improving.
So out of all the books that you've come across then, because I think a lot of our viewers and people watching right now might be interested in those sort of books, that, you know, those go-to books to sort of help you get through. What's been the best one or best few that you've come across?
I don't know about the best one. The one I've been enjoying most recently, actually, because that's the one that's just, you know, at the moment, is that Save the Cat Writes a Novel.
Oh, yeah.
So you've got the Save the Cat book originally, which the guy who wrote that was mostly around movies. And the Save the Cat, if people haven't read it, comes from the idea of, you know, you can make your character engaging to the audience just by getting them to do something small heroic in the first pages or the first minutes, and in that case it's save the cat, you know, save a cat off a tree. The reader or the viewer will forgive them anything after that if they've done that one little thing. And it was very interesting about empathy, and also about things like opening images, which are really important, I think, in novels now, because we live in such a visual culture. Anyway, another writer has taken those theories and applied them to novel writing, and I just find it interesting. It's I don't know if you guys get this, but sometimes if you do a course, or you are in a meeting or something like that, and your mind starts to wander, something that somebody says just takes you off on a different journey that is quite different from what they intended, but it's just giving you that trigger. Yeah. Really good. I like that one.
I certainly think an author's sort of mind, whether you're just starting out, you're someone who's very much written for a long, long time, that is a key element to being able to create, is that imagination and that ability to drift off like you kind of used to do, I guess a lot of people did in school. and whether that stays around or not, dreaming out the window sort of thing. And that's definitely something I've always done. And so when some people ask about how I've written certain things, it's just like, that's basically what I've done. It's just the ideas there and I'm just drifting off with it. So I think that's a key thing to kind of, you can almost harness it or practice it, I guess. But if you're not aware of it, that's when those ideas, I guess, can slip away.
Definitely. And they are the collision. Ideas come from a collision of familiar things. And suddenly, you put them together and you put them together in a way that only you can do. It's why when people say, well, there's only 7 stories or 11 or 110 or, whatever book you read, you've always, you are you're completely unique. So even if you're telling what some people might think of as a familiar story, you're going to bring everything, your life experience, your view of the world into it and create something completely new.
I've got Ross, hello Ross to you. He said, I use Save the Cat for helping beat sheets. It's brilliant. Helping with beat sheets. Is that a joke that I'm missing?
I think that's a joke.
I think it's
maybe, potentially. I don't know. I never know with Ross.
Well, I suppose a beat sheet is a real thing, but yeah.
I don't know. Okay, so is the House Shit, is that your latest book? And that
would be here we go. Here's a prop from my file there.
I love the quote that someone said, Black Mirror in book form.
Yeah, that was nice. That was a proper review. Yeah, it was cool to get that.
So is that because it delves into a dark world? And again, is this something that comes from your experiences that you go kind of deep into, I guess, the way things could be? Yeah,
I mean, it's not paranormal. I have written books this is another one. That's a book that was my young adult series, and that is more kind of paranormal and mysterious. The House Share is not, it's not ghostly, it's not supernatural, but it is a sort of future. I guess it's got that kind of futuristy thing and that thing of people living in a community. So I read an article. The inspiration for that was reading an article about these amazing supercharged co-living arrangements, these fantastic locations, and it's normally in city centres where you can't really afford a decent place to live, but if you go into one of these co-living places, they have tiny little bedrooms, a bit like supercharged halls of residence, but really cool communal areas, and you're encouraged to be in a community and do stuff together and activities. And I was just like, yeah, that's great. What if it went wrong? And what if someone's controlling it behind the scenes? And that was the concept, really. And of course, it came out in lockdown, which was a downside, obviously, for every writer whose book came out in lockdown. No bookshops, although it was in some of the supermarkets, which was cool.
Also,
it's that it's that idea of being locked in, being kind of shut in with these people. It was like your dream house is to die for. That was the thing. So it was a lot of fun, actually. Hang on.
But it did get some fantastic reviews, including reviews from C.L. Taylor and Lisa Jewell. So they're authors in that genre that are well respected. So for them to give you that praise, how did that feel when you sort of took that book out? Even if it's
always lovely. I mean, I've found always, and this was unexpected to me really, because the world of television, although lots of people are nice, it can be a bit cutthroat. I mean, I'm not cutthroat, but it can be a little bit like that. And writing world, I think, is quite different. The mutual support is really good, and I love the fact, if they'll help, if they like something, and I do it the same. I pay it forward as well. If I like a book or I really think an author is coming through, I want people to know about it. I kind of think that a lot of people think of authors or even publishers, I hear this quite a lot if I'm advising new writers or agents, as being gatekeepers or trying to keep new writing out. And I think that is totally the wrong interpretation. Everyone I've ever met in the book world loves books. That's why they come into it, whether they're publishing them or writing them. And that mutual support, and that's one of the best things about it, really. So it's always great to hear that, because you think it comes from a place of wanting more people to read, and if they want them to read my books, that's fantastic.
So Kate, you said before, like when you were a journalist and you were there and you talked about Nick Hornby and Lisa Jewell being one of these people that you were reading, how did that feel, like knowing that she had then read your book after being a fan of hers yourself?
No, I've met Lisa a lot of times actually over the years, because she is another person who's pivoted a bit. So she was writing those, Ralph's Party was her first book, which I really loved. And then all of her books, which were put into the chick lit category, don't get me started. But, you know, now it feels very old fashioned now. I'm quite glad about that. But, you know, even at the time, I was like, so offensive. But it was a genre. It was seen as a genre. And her books and many of the books in that category were so much more than, you know, just romantic comedies. But Lisa, I've met her a few times, and you know, she's moved on in her books have pivoted a little bit into darker territory, and I actually think that's a lot to do with why the psychological thriller genre, of which The House Share is one of them, came about, because you had a lot of those readers who were reading the Bridget Joneses and the Lisa Jewell books and Jenny Colgan, all of those writers, Mike Gale, and then they did the romancing. They got married, they had the children, and then maybe they realized it wasn't quite what it was cracked up to be, or they just kind of saw things taking a darker turn, and they didn't want to read the romance stories anymore. And that's where I think, and plus you combine that with the crime writers and readers who are already there, and you get a really interesting take on domestic noir, or whatever you want to call it, on domestic life.
Interesting. You had a couple of your books next to you there.
Yeah.
Have you got a favorite cover out of those books there, or is there another cover of your's somewhere else that's a favorite of yours?
One I do like, I have to say, I do like my Soul Beach one. I do quite like that. So the concept for that one was Facebook for the Dead. That was my kind of most Black Mirror-y one. The one that I'm loving at the moment, I could maybe find out if I can work out how to share things and get it up on screen. I could actually reveal the cover that we've just agreed for the Eva Carter books, actually, secretly, sneakily.
That'd be cool.
If I can work out how to do it.
Yeah, well, we'll do a little break in a minute, and you can try and figure out there, because I need to.
I love that one. I'm really loving those covers. So
So, Kate, we have a few like writing community chat show sort of staple questions that are designed to put you on the spot a little bit.
Right.
They're all to do with writing, so don't worry.
All right, they're not like general knowledge, are they?
No. So the first one is, if you could change the ending to any novel that exists and rewrite it as yourself, which novel would it be and why?
I might have to come back to that one. Because my problem is, like, I read books like really quickly, and I can very rarely remember the end.
Do you even get the end?
Rewriting, whatever happens. I might have to pass on that one and come back to that one. Is that right?
Yeah.
No problem.
So the next one in that realm of questions would be, if you could take any character out of fiction, whether it be in literature or TV or whatever, and do whatever you like with that character, what character would that be and why?
I would be quite intrigued to meet Hannibal Lecter, I guess. That would be quite.
That is a great choice.
That would be an intriguing interaction. Obviously, so long as he was in a cage and I wasn't in the same.
I was going to say, what would you do with that character? Would you keep him in a cage for that meeting?
I don't know. I might cook him a nice vegetarian meal, perhaps. Just so I could convert him.
I'm sure he'd appreciate that.
If you could convert Hannibal to being a vegetarian, you'd be like.
When he gets some tendencies to want to eat meat, and just tell him, it's all right, you're on the 5-2, you're not meeting today, you're just on a low calorie.
No. Put him on the fasting diet. That would, oh my goodness, that could have very unforeseen consequences. Yeah, I make him a nice mushroom risotto and see if that would kind of deal with a nice Chianti, and see if that would deal with his murderous instincts.
Nice. On murder, and well, hopefully not on murder. Hope it doesn't go this way. But one of the questions that we do like to ask, which is a bit morbid, is yeah, I like to ask this, but I did write a book about death. Come on. So when you're on your deathbed and you look back at your writing catalogue, does success look like for you at that point? What would you be happy with?
So I would like a movie. There've been a few kind of nibbles here, but we haven't got to a movie level yet. That would be quite nice. And obviously kind of #1 on the New York Times and those kind of things. That would be quite nice as well. But I think a movie. movie, and in a movie coming out in times when you can actually go on set and go to the premiere.
Who would be your main sort of male or female character you would love to go in any of your movies?
Oh, there's so many good actors. I really like Carey Mulligan, actually. I like her a lot in anything. And the rest, again, the terrible memory coming through. And Goran Visnich, who was always in ER and Welcome to Sarajevo. Do you remember that film? He's basically the world's most handsome man. So that would be nice. That would be nice to have, apart from my partner, obviously. But yeah, that would be a cool person to meet. Oh, maybe George as well. George was in ER as well, of course. So I'm sure they'd like to get back together again for me, for my film.
Reunion. It. So one of the other questions that I was going to ask is escaped my mind. I can't remember. I was on a roll then as well. No, I was going to ask you if who would play you then in your life? Like if let's say they made a movie about you.
Oh,
good question.
So I used to do a little bit of extraing, and now I can't remember her name either. She was the one who was I was a body double once when they had to do some reshoots. And it was a film called The Awakening. Can you remember the film called The Awakening? It had Dominic West, and the reason I can't remember the woman's name is that I was her double because she couldn't be on set. So I'll have to look that one up as well. Imogen.
Give us a second.
If anyone can remember. Anyway, given the fact I was her body double, I think it was to do with, without getting too...
Imelda?
Imelda Staunton. Yeah. Imelda Staunton, that's the one, not Imogen. Yeah, so she was quite. They had to find somebody who had the right colour hair for her part and would fit into her corset.
Nice.
And so that was why I got the gig. So we must be quite a similar. Although this was before the 5'2", so maybe she wouldn't be the right person after all.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
And another question that we do ask, and it sometimes does bring up some interesting answers, is: have you ever had any sort of weird fan experiences? So like maybe you've been at a book signing, or maybe it's been online, something that's really stood out to you that's gone, oof, that's a bit weird.
Not so much a fan experience, but going back to my whole, chick lit kind of experiences, right at the very beginning, I was entitled to join the Society of Authors. So that when I got my first book deal, I was like, oh, this is like having the equity card, but for writers, although it doesn't really make a lot of difference. But I thought I'll do it. So I joined the Society of Authors, and I turned up all kind of bright-eyed and bushy-tailed to their first event that I was entitled to go to, a sort of social evening. I actually hate those kind of things. I'm not very good at small talk, but kind of wandering around, kind of, looking for someone to talk to. And obviously you're all authors, so you kind of, somebody says, oh, what do you write? So I told him about my first book, this Old School Ties, the one about the school reunion. And he went, oh, you mean chick lit? And I was kind of like, well, you could call it that. I said, he said, I don't know how you can bring yourself to write that kind of stuff. And I was, okay, right.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I don't know what to, so, okay, what do you write then? I asked him. And his answer was computer manuals.
Wow.
So, there we go. I didn't say I don't know how you can. My dad was in the early days of computing, so I've got nothing against computer manuals, but I was a bit surprised given his, aversion to what I was coming. So nothing's really that.
So obviously you're feeling there, you felt completely underwhelmed. Have you ever had an experience where you've been like, oh my God, this person? Because on the show a few episodes back now, we had Steve Kavanagh on the show, and for me he is like a massive hero. I've read all of his books and I've obsessively read them and been like, oh, this is amazing. And when he came on and I heard his voice, I was like, oh my God. Obviously inside, not on the outside. But yeah, that was a big deal for me. And I know Chris had a similar experience with someone that we interviewed on the show, with Casey Whalen. He came on the show. He'd been listening to his radio drama, and he couldn't speak either for a while. So have you had that experience where you've just been completely whoa, starstruck?
I think like you were saying about all those original people, the kind of the writers that I admired, and then you realize you're going to those parties and you know, somebody introduces you, you might go to your publisher party. I remember them you know, the big glitzy affairs when I was published by Orion, and they used to have quite a lot of those people. They had Michael Palin, who always goes to those parties and is kind of obviously a bit amazing and incredibly charming and really, really lovely. So I was a bit starstruck by him. But actually, I think when you just realise there are other human beings. And I'll say that, and then the next party I go to, if there's ever any party ever again, then I will, you know, probably be lost for words and think, oh yeah, that was it. That was the person that I was always going to be really daunted by. But most authors are quite nice.
It's a strange one. It's I'm a big Mumford and Sons fan, and we went to see them in Cardiff one day, and it had been rescheduled for a random Monday, and we'd already booked a day off, so we went down early and we were sat in the pub, and I saw out the window Marcus Mumford on his phone outside the pub window. And for me, I've got tattoos of the lyrics and massive fan. We basically followed him into the pub next door, and there was like hardly anyone in there. And when he came and spoke to us, and when I spoke to him, I was like, oh, this is just completely normal, like the conversation we're having. But then when Casey Whalen came on the show and it's just a conversation audio, I was like, I didn't know what's going on. So it's weird to see, you know, in that situation when it's like someone that I'm a big fan of face to face, I was completely fine with. So weird.
Yeah.
Backwards. Right. So what we're going to do now is go on to a new family member. This is something we do, Kate, every week, where we highlight someone in the writing community that's an author who's trying to get them more exposure. So we play their Twitter with GIFs, and that GIF is the choosing of the guest. So if you have something in particular that you like, it can be anything. We've had dragons, we've had stingrays, we've had dry hair shampoo, I believe, last few weeks ago. So there's anything at all that you can think of, and I'll give you a couple of minutes, and I'm going to play this next stupid video that we've got, and then we'll get an answer. Good. So have you got an idea? Any ideas?
Have I got an idea? No, I haven't. No, I'm like completely. I'm not a very big giffer, really.
What about Hannibal?
Yeah, all right. Let's go for Hannibal. Yeah,
let's Hannibal this person on Twitter. Please possibly quote the WCCS so they don't get completely freaked out. This person is Alessi, and at Alessi Bill. She's admin at Ubisoft Community Facebook group, co-founder at the 4players.it content creator of Assassin's Collection Facebook fan page. There's a lot of text going on here, and historical fantasy, high fantasy writer. She's at 1,582 followers. So at Alessi, that is the one, Chris. Thank you very much. At ALESSYBIL, Alessi Bill. So if we can find her on Twitter, guys, all of you listening, if you could do that for us.
Hannibal Lecter, nice.
Well, Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, go for it right now. Let me find the lady.
There's so many great gifts.
Is there really?
Yeah, there's quite a few. Who's your Hannibal Lecter, though? That's the question. Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The more recent version, because he was really good. I can't remember his name now, but he was good.
Oh, I know. Yeah, Mads Mikkelsen. Is it?
That's the one. Yeah. I thought he was brilliant. I thought he was really good as Hannibal.
Good, but I still think, you know, for intensity, you can't really match a bit of Anthony.
Yeah,
no
definitely.
Way. Especially as he's a Welshman and all that, you know.
Is he actually?
I think so.
Oh, you're just claiming another celebrity as being Welsh?
No, I think he is. I got a feeling he is. Please don't quote me on that. Oh, I like. Someone's put the guy that you must be speaking about up there. Anna has. I'm not sure of his name. I think he was in one of the James Bond films. Was he that guy?
Yeah, he was. He was a baddie.
Yeah, really good baddie.
Again, another film that's been temporarily ruined by COVID. Okay, next part, the question time. We'll all answer questions from this part of the show. So bear with me. Another stupid video. Okay, so writing community question time. Kate will all answer these questions together, and we'll send it around. So the first one we have is from Anya. What role does reading, if any, have in the writing process? Some authors like authors?
Some authors.
Some authors like Stephen King say to read widely because it helps authors with the process. Authors.
I
don't know.
Who's anyone? Who's going first?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely read loads. I find it a bit harder when I'm in the middle of a book, and funnily enough, audiobooks really do it for me in that case, because it's more about the story than the style. I find when I'm listening to an audiobook, so it's more about taking me to a place. Whereas if I'm reading the text, then I'm quite likely to accidentally take on something of the rhythm of that writer. And I'm very conscious. I won't like nick phrases, but I might my own kind of writing style might change a bit. So I tend to try and avoid that in the middle of it. But yeah, I mean, I'm an avid reader, love it.
Yeah. I agree completely with you on that, especially when it comes to audiobooks, because I'm a big fan. The exception to that is recently I'm listening to the Sandman series with Neil Gaiman. And the way that is sort of read as it's written really makes me want to change my writing style. So normally I'm in the same boat as you, where it takes me to the story, but I listen to his words so clearly in this. I think of the way he projects it, the way he reads it is so good. So I don't know. I think that does sway me slightly the other direction.
Good luck trying to write like Neil Gaiman.
I know.
It's not a bad thing, is it? As long as you
definitely
don't go to any Scottish islands in the middle of lockdown, that might get you into trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always reading. I've always got something on the go. When I'm writing, I tend to go to sort of my favorite writers. So at the moment, I'm writing a book. So I'm reading a lot of like Elmo Leonard. I read a lot of his books when I'm writing, because I think I take on quite a similar style, and I love the way he's. Like we were talking about before with his books on writing and stuff like that, he's given a lot of advice on writing, and I can really see that in his books, and I think it helps me with the process of seeing how he's structured things and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm always reading something, but yeah, favorite writer.
Do you find you go off it occasionally though? That's the thing I hate. Like about a year ago, I really lost my reading mojo, and it really upset me, and it's happened to me a few times over the years, and I don't feel like myself when I'm not reading, but I almost have to do that thing a bit like, do you guys do the Pomodoro technique ever for your writing? Where it's named after the kitchen timers that used to be shaped like a tomato, and you basically, if you think you can't write, you have to set one of those, or I've got a little app on my desktop, and you write for the amount of time, the 25 minutes, and you think, if I can't even write for 25 minutes, what am I playing at? It's like a concentrated period. And I did the same with reading. I just said to myself, right, you've just got to get into the practice of reading again for 5 minutes a day and then stop. And so there wasn't really any expectation. And I think sometimes in times of stress and stuff, it can stop you. And if you are a reader, but you've fallen out of love with it, that's one way of getting back into it, I think.
Yeah,
I definitely think there was a lot of people that struggled that when COVID started and the first sort of wave came through, there was a lot of people that had very low or a lot of distraction going on that they couldn't focus on reading. But I think it's slowly coming back for a lot of people now.
Again, I think I'm the same with that in terms of I have my favorite authors. So if I am going through a bit of a period where I'm like, I'm not really enjoying this, I'll probably just keep plugging through, but I'll read the authors that I know I'm really going to enjoy. So like Michael Connelly is a big one for me. He's quite prolific. He releases a book every year, and there's a lot of other go-to authors that I have so there's always something that I can dip into that I know I'm going to enjoy.
There's a lot of people agreeing with David's comment, and he says, in regards to what we just spoke about, he said, I don't think it has to be reading. Films and TV shows and even video games can now inspire you. That is certainly true. TV and films, obviously, and video games now, I think more money pumped into that. I think it's the biggest industry above that kind of dwarfs music and video film at the moment, which is kind of crazy. But they're bringing in A-lister actors into these things with amazing storylines. So it is stories are being found everywhere now. So I agree with you that it's not just in writing and reading. So you can find inspiration everywhere, I guess.
Yeah, you never know, do you? Although I prefer repetitive video games. I'm not I'll tell you what, one of the things that helped me in lockdown as well was doing the whole I got headset.
Oh,
And I,
okay.
the kind of whole VR thing, and I just play pinball or Beat Saber or something like that. I'm not very good with the narrative ones. I just like the kind of or the boxing one. I love that. That was great, especially at certain times after certain press conferences.
Yeah, I've still never done it, but I've seen many videos on YouTube where they go into like these Silent Hill and Resident Evil spooky houses. I'm desperate to get involved with one of those. So yeah. That'll be another thing I can stick on YouTube. Okay. If you could tell yourself or your younger self, your younger writing self, anything, what would that be? Do you want to go first?
Yeah. Who's going to go?
Go on, Kate, you go first. If you've got an answer, go for it.
Just get on with it. Just get on with it and believe you can do it, I guess. I think. And also write more in your diaries. So I started keeping a diary when I was about 12, and it is such tedious rubbish. It is, and also about people that I have no idea who they were, but obviously were really big at the time. And it will say things like, had German, it was boring, went to town, saw, I don't know, Jane. Who the hell was Jane? I don't know. I've got nothing about my feelings and my kind of, deep teenage angsty emotions. It was just literally had PE. It was cold.
You still have
more detail, Kate, for God's sake.
You still use a diary now, Kate?
I fell out of the habit of doing it a few years ago, actually. There are a few kind of big family things that happened where I just didn't feel like doing it, and I was just not in the emotional headspace. It just felt too much. And also, I think maybe writing for a living now, which is this amazing thing and a dream come true, but it does mean that, like, somehow the last thing I want to do when I sit down at night is go, oh, this is what I did. And mostly what I did was sit in front of a computer writing. So it becomes a bit, that's Black Mirror. It's like screens repeating. Going, I wrote, and now I'm writing about having spent my day writing.
I was just wondering if it was worth doing sort of in this stage of life so you can actually pick up sort of emotions and stuff for writing and maybe help it that way. I'm not sure. But obviously, I don't know. I've never kept a diary, Chris.
What, keeping a diary or younger self advice?
Either.
Well, I never kept a diary, but when I moved in with my girlfriend, she found a box of all her diaries, and I took great pleasure in reading them aloud to her. Especially, it was funny because like every 3 months she had a different boy that was a focus, and she was like obsessed. She was madly in love. They were meeting at the Chippy. Like he was going to buy her a scallop. Like it was amazing. It was really, really funny. And she's got quite a thick Rochdalian accent in the diary. So like the way she spelt certain words is the same way that she would say them. So that was hilarious. But younger writing advice, I would probably say that, and I mean this in the best possible way, that your favorite writers are just people. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've learned from this show, that, there's not necessarily a special talent other than being persistent and keeping at the writing and just keeping going and stuff like that. So I think that's probably what I tell myself, because I did put it off for a long time.
Yeah, I agree. I think just getting it done, and it's pretty much the same advice that's come from a majority of the established authors we've had on the show, is just get it done, just do it. And it's because so many people spend so much time thinking, oh, I'm not a writer, or I'm an aspiring writer, and just dreaming of doing something, when instead the majority of people who got there just actually did it and just sat down, you know what, I'm just going to do it. And then they've done it, they've crossed that line. Whereas a lot of people are too afraid to start even the journey. So just start the journey.
Fear is a really big thing, isn't it? I mean, I think you're kind of scared of writing, but also scared of sharing your work. And you find all sorts of ways of putting it off. And actually, even if it's not perfect, I think that's the other thing we were talking about, editing. You can spend ages crafting the perfect sentence, but the more I write and the more I read, especially now, I think story is king and queen and prince, and it's what matters, because we live in that visual culture. You can have a writing style, but I think the sort of flowery writing is, it's quite a niche audience. What people really crying out for is amazing characters and a unique story.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Good question.
Cool.
I like it.
These are just some that I've randomly pulled off the internet as well to mix in with the questions from the community. And this one says, you've been tossed into an insane asylum. What do you tell the people in there to prove that you don't belong inside?
Ooh.
It's a tough one. It is a very tough one. Because the more you kind of complain about it, the more you kind of sound like you should be there, right?
Yeah, it's catch-22, isn't it?
Marius, yeah.
I'm a writer, so who's to say I don't belong?
Speaking of Insane Asylum, have you seen Shutter Island? Because that was a fantastic story.
It was, and Dennis Lehane is a great writer as well. He's done some really good books. Yeah, I'd probably just say quiet, to be honest, and enjoy the peace at the moment, because it's pretty much like an insane asylum in my day-to-day life. So I think I'd probably actually enjoy the peace and quiet.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I don't know. I haven't really got an answer. That's kind of a tough question. Rich Hursty's in the house. He says, just joining, but what book do you wish you had written and why, other than Harry Potter? I'm going to go Shutter Island because I thought that was fantastic and I didn't see what was coming, and I think I thought it was great. So I'll say that one. Chris, you got one you'd want to write?
Fight
Club?
Yeah, it's going to have to, I'd say Fight Club, just because I think I studied at a university for my like dissertation and stuff like that, and I really enjoyed that book and the impact that it had at the time as well. So I think, I mean, I don't want to say he's made his living off one book, because he hasn't. He's written quite a lot since then, but it was a big book that did change his career. So yeah, I think I picked that.
Okay, is there one that you would specifically want to write?
I think it's a, you know, it's you can think about the money and you can, you know, all that kind of stuff, but I don't really wish I'd written anyone else's book. I just want to keep writing the books that I want to write and write them better, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, Reb Hefner. Reb Hefner. I have
no relation.
So many questions right now. Why am I awake and more alert at 2:57 a.m. than I was all day? Well, first of all, I actually think that there's something here that may be lodged in my stupid brain. That was, I believe that's a natural time between 3 and 4 people wake up and are quite creative at that time of day. I don't know why. There's some science behind that, I think. So perhaps that. And he says, why does my Twitter look like Instagram?
Oh, they've changed certain elements, haven't they? Apparently.
I haven't seen that on mine. I've seen pictures of. Kate, are you looking confused there? Have you got Twitter?
No, I don't know about the second one, but I have started waking up loads of times at 3 o'clock in the morning. So I do sympathise, and like I can't get back to sleep. And I have started. I'm at a knotty point with a new book, or not a new book, but a book that I'm editing, and I wake up and I just can't switch off from thinking about it.
Have you ever tried to being creative at that time of when you're woken up at that time of morning?
I don't know about I mean, I do sometimes try and write stuff down because, you know, I'll try the 10 minutes of lying there and kind of breathing deeply and doing all that stuff, and normally it doesn't work, and then I'll probably get up and go downstairs, and I will sometimes write down what is in my head at that moment to try and just get it out there, because otherwise you know, sure as hell you won't remember it in the morning otherwise.
Isn't 3 a.m. the exorcism time? Yeah, perhaps. I'm not sure. Yeah. Have you ever had a dream and that idea is manifested into a story with you? Anyone? No?
I had a really vivid dream the other day that was people didn't have houses anymore. They just had boxes. But when they went into the sort of space, they put a headset on and everything was in the headset that they wanted. So they didn't need to move around and walk about. Like the house was all in the headset. It was all visual. So yeah, that was really vivid for me the other day. So that kind of stuck with me, but I've never had anything other than that.
That's certainly a Black Mirror episode. I'm pretty sure this is very cool. Yeah.
It sounds quite lockdowny as well. Yeah, it sounds quite dystopia, lockdown, Black Mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's probably what it is. I don't think I'll ever write it.
Sometimes you get the emotions. I don't always remember the stories, but sometimes you feel a really strong emotion after a dream, don't you? And that sometimes finds its way into a scene, I think.
Next question. Does writing energize or exhaust you? Kate?
It depends on the writing. I mean, sometimes if it's a difficult scene or I'm editing, then I feel exhausted, but I can't really do without it. So for a couple of weeks after I sent the latest draft of a new book in, and for once, I think it's probably lockdown related, I didn't really have a new idea that I was dying to work on. I just felt so antsy. And now I've had a chat with my editor and got some edits back that I'm working through. I'm so much happier. So that's the kind of energizing and a sort of definitely raising my serotonin levels, having something to get stuck into.
So with that, Kate, have you had the same editor and the same relationship throughout your whole writing career, or have you changed multiple times and stuff?
No, I've had lots of brilliant editors and learned different things from all of them. Because again, writing different things, it means you don't tend to stick with, they might specialize in a particular area, and I've moved publishers or they've moved, and they've all got different styles and techniques. And I've definitely, some are more detail focused and some are more thematic. I quite like being challenged, at the time, and I've learned that thing of just like, if you get something that doesn't feel comfortable, often that's because it is kind of prodding you. They might not always have the answer, but often they, it's very rare that they cite something that isn't a problem, because they want the book to be as good as it can be as well. You're all in it together. It's kind of a team effort.
Nice. There's a few people on the comments saying that writing is energizing and editing exhausts people. Personally, I agree with that, but I hate editing. So what about you, Chris? You got any opinion on that?
I would say more energizing, simply because when I'm writing a lot, I tend to listen to music and like create playlists and stuff. And I think whenever I listen to music, I can't help but get a bit energized, because like, even if I want to like tidy the house or something and I can't be bothered, I'll just put my headphones on and do it, and I'll find that I'm doing it. So yeah, definitely energizing.
Mario, question: how effective is the use of grammar or proofreading software, for example Grammarly or ProWriting Aid or any others, and do you use them?
I've been using ProWriting Aid actually. A couple of I tried out some of the earlier ones of 5 years ago or something, and they were a bit naff, and they didn't really, the granularity of them was a bit limited. It would just highlight things that you already knew or that were part of your style or part of your character's style. Whereas now they've become a lot more sophisticated, and I think ProWriting Aid I have been using because it just highlights those things. You don't have to take it all on board, but it highlights the overuse. I like their one where they're looking at the different sensory inputs and how often you're describing something kinetically or auditorily or visually. And I think that's really quite clever, because especially if I write a lot in the first person, and so you would hope therefore that each character would have a slightly different way of looking at the world, and that kind of reinforces that, or maybe shows me places at a deeper level than you'd expect, where it kind of enhance that characterization. I think they're good. Yeah. Guys, what about you?
I use Grammarly, certainly, because I have terrible grammar, and it does help me. But I have the same issue then when I sort of doubt. I finish working, say, on a manuscript, and I've gone over it with Grammarly plenty of times. I then put it into, say, a Word document, and then that checker comes up, and it highlights a whole different range of things that Grammarly didn't pick up. So there's definitely a difference there, and they don't pick up certain things between them. So it's kind of weird. But I'm just kind of going off that at the moment, and I do it. I couldn't live without that, to be honest with you. Things are bad enough anyway, so that's my go-to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan as well. I think that they're almost like, before you show it to anyone else, they're your extra pairs of eyes, kind of in a weird way, before you can start sharing your work with other people. So yeah, big advocate.
Another tough question coming up. What secret conspiracy would you like to start?
Is this one that exists, or are we making this up?
What do you mean?
Because there's loads of conspiracies, isn't there?
the one that you could start as in one you'd like to make up.
Oh,
It's a tough question. It really is. Another one. I don't know. I'd like to say the conspiracy that obviously due to the fans that we have, that Nick Cage is coming on the show. That could be a conspiracy, right?
yeah.
I like a conspiracy to get kind of more puppies and kittens available to people randomly, just to kind of for the pure joy of them. I'd like maybe to take over all the government press conferences, or maybe some things that it pops up, because I am a bit of a doom scroller at the moment. So maybe I would like an automatic thing that a certain number of puppies or kittens appear on your phone when you've done too much of it. Is that conspiracy? It's a very small one.
I like that. It's almost like a bit Dom Jolly-esque, like just running up to someone and giving them a kitten or giving them a puppy and then going, "It's yours now, deal with it."
Yeah.
Like it.
Pineapple and pizza will bring about the apocalypse. That is a conspiracy. And we know you're a hater. We know you're a hater, Halo. Kate, pineapple and pizza, yes or no?
Nah.
Yes, go on, Kate.
I do like sweet and savoury things. Pineapple and cheese on a stick is a much underrated 70s kind of canapé. I do like that combo, cheese and chutney, all of that, but not on a pizza.
There we go. See, I get it. Makes sense.
Well, yeah.
So, Kate, let me ask you just a few more sort of writery-based questions. Going back to deathbed and being on a deathbed, let's say somebody else is on their deathbed and they only have time to read one of your novels. Which novel would you give them to read and why?
Oh, well, I don't think I'd give them the Facebook for the Dead novel. That might not be very relaxing.
I come up with a genius business idea.
I think it's always going to be the one that hasn't come out yet, that hasn't kind of, that you hope it's the best one. So I think it would actually be the one. So I've the one that's coming out next year is called How to Save a Life, and that is under the Eva Carter pseudonym, and that is about it's a love story that starts when a heart stops, and so it's about people kind of doing incredible, courageous things and coping with the consequences, and it's about life saving and that kind of thing. And I would hope that it's also about seizing the day. So I would hope that that's quite moving, but also quite distracting for the fact you're on your deathbed yourself.
Yeah, nice, like it, and a bit of a preview.
Yeah, and that's as we figured out earlier is Eva Cassidy.
Carter.
No, Eva Carter. Sorry, not Eve. Because that's a different person.
Eva and not Cassidy. Yeah, it's Eva Carter. Yeah,
Eva
not
Carter.
not the erotic writer Eve Carter.
No, not that one. Helen says that sounds amazing. Definitely. Really random question here. Do penguins have knees?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
Birds have knees generally.
I couldn't tell you.
I mean, that's a bigger question. Do birds have knees?
That is.
I couldn't tell you.
Lost me at penguins and knees.
And yet, how could they articulate otherwise? I'm just trying to work this out.
Well, they do kind of waddle, so perhaps that's straight-legged, right?
That's because it's coming from the hips, and there's no, I
don't know. That's one for us to find out. And random question: do you watch The Crown?
I haven't been watching the new series yet. I've been sort of saving it up, but I do like it.
No, newborns don't have kneecaps. Are you talking about children? Because I knew that. Human people. Flamingos have knees.
That grows like the fontanelle.
Flamingos have knees, apparently.
Oh, well.
And they're very articulate. Are they really?
Yeah, very articulate. Yeah.
We have a writing tip of the week of the show, I guess, from the man Neil Gaiman himself. We're talking about. He said, "This is how to do it. You sit down at the keyboard and you put one word after another until it's done. It's that easy and that hard." It's a great tip, and it kind of sums up what we said earlier, I believe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you know what we've got to look forward to, even though kind of things are a bit dull at the moment? What to look forward to at the moment is that there's only 8 shows until our Christmas special.
Wow.
That's coming around quick.
That is. Have you got plans for Christmas, Kate?
We were hoping to try and, get away actually to the sun, because quite often we've gone to the Canary Islands, but it's not looking terribly likely at the moment. So yeah, I don't know. I haven't cancelled it yet. It's one of those where I can cancel everything at the last minute, and you never know. And it kind of, there's like, is it right to try and go away? But we would be like safe as anything.
Yeah.
So I'm still hoping that might happen because I miss the sun.
Yeah, there's not a lot of sun in Brighton, is there?
Well,
it's kind of the same.
Sunny, but November, December, not quite so much. Well, we had some lovely days, and people do go, even though the council tell them not to. People do often swim on Christmas Day down here in Brighton.
We have the same thing where I live in Wales, that people come for a Christmas Day swim, and I think they're crazy people. I wouldn't do it. I'm too busy drinking prosecco at that time of the morning.
Yeah.
Halo said, "What are we dressing up as, Chris?" Well, I'll do a Santa if you do an elf.
Oh, why do I have to be the elf?
Well, I'll do an elf then. You do Santa.
Yeah, I'd rather do Santa, I think. Give me an excuse.
Good.
So, Kate, if people have been watching tonight and they've gone, do you know what? I'm really interested in what Kate's books are about. Where can they find them? And just all that good stuff.
You can find me on the website. So my website's kate-harrison.com, and on most social, I'm at Kate Writes Books. And actually, as you're all writers here, I should probably also mention, kind of random plug, but as it's writers, I've also written this, which is my because I'm massively into the pitch. Unlike a lot of writers who hate doing the blurb, that's actually my favourite bit of writing a book, and the other 100,000 words are kind of quite tedious. So actually writing the blurb, that's normally how I start, is write the blurb before the book exists, which also is part of that mindset thing, to trick myself that maybe the book is going to exist one day. So I put it all in it, and also because I used to do that in telly, I used to come up with program ideas and pitch them to make them happen. So any writerly people, you'll find a bit on my website, and you'll be able to download things that way as well.
That's amazing. Fantastic. We will in fact share the link to your website and all that stuff in the show description. I did just pop it up on screen there, which is here. It's a beautiful looking website. There's lots on there, and across, welcome to my website, clearly. And these are all the books there that you spoke about, and Power Pitch on the right hand side, which does fantastic. And there's the house share that is Black Mirror in book form, as we spoke about earlier.
Cool.
So fantastic stuff on there, and definitely check it out. And again, we'll leave the links there, so please do so. The conversation
as well. I put on random recipes. I've got a really good one I just put up for paneer tikka masala. So
nice.
You'll have to check that out, Chris, because again, we spoke about how your dieting is kind of
I can't eat paneer at the moment, but when I've lost the weight and I get back onto it, I'll do that. Yeah, definitely. Sounds good.
There you go. 5-2 books there, 5-2 diet, fasting thing. And I'm sure you can find out more on that part of the website as well. So we're talking about the Christmas party, and it's kind of gone a bit weird. Anya said, do the Lord of the Rings elf as opposed to a Christmas elf.
Oh, yeah, I can do that.
I thought you'd been Santa now. You changed it around, have we?
Yeah, but Lord of the Rings is much cooler than being Father Christmas.
Not really. Anyway, so Kate, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure to have you on, and I hope that that you've enjoyed, and I didn't mess the start of the show too much. But yeah, thank you so much for coming.
Sorry for flunking some of the questions. It's just like, like I say, I just can't remember actors, titles, the last book I read.
That definitely sounds like I do, so don't worry about it. So thank you so much. And there were some real tough questions in there as well, so don't stress about that too much. We'll leave descriptions in there, and of course we will promote your stuff in the descriptions as well, and I'll be a sponsor for the show. Thank you very much for sponsoring the show. We are going to the other book is up there, not the original one, but we'll see you guys on Friday. As one of our previous guests is coming back on. She's a guest that was on when we had audio, not visual, but she's coming back. Kristen Bailey's going to come and join us on Friday, and we can't wait. But again, thank you to Kate, and we'll carry on chatting to her very shortly after the show goes off air. But you guys can do us a big favor by sharing this, tweeting it, downloading the podcast as always, and leaving us a review is always welcome. So thank you very much, guys, for tuning in, and we'll see you on Friday.
Is it a bit where we wave now?
Yeah, you can wave now. Great. Thank you, guys.